Well, let's see. This looks like I've never heard of this, but this is new ham radio annual antenna issue. And it's definitely old. May 1989. Damn, time goes by fast. I was just a little kid, though. I was like 13 years old. 14, 13, somewhere around there. Damn. TS440. You know, that was like a really good radio for what it was. Didn't realize that radio was that old. You don't really see too many of those. Yeah, very bare bones. So the Kenwood, it was like 100. It says 100% duty cycle, continuous key down, exceeding 1 hour. New radios are not rated that way, dude. You can abuse the hell out of these things, as have many 11 meter guys. I bought one. It was doing like 215 watts or some crazy shit. They messed with the bias, and I had to turn it down. They had the wires soldered directly to the back. I bought it from a guy in Mesa, Arizona. And he was like really old, like 82, 83, somewhere around that. And he said that he couldn't talk on the radio anymore because something to do with RF and a pacemaker or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he was selling all his radio stuff. But he said he used to own a CB shop. And I remember seeing in his driveway they had a bunch of those pilot cars, you know, like Dodge Dakotas that they would use for towing other vehicles. They would drive behind with the, you know, flashing oversized vehicle sign. And that was probably one of the most boogered up radios and most cigarette covered radios I've ever seen in my entire life. That TS440 smelled like a fucking ashtray. And like I said, it was putting out over 200 watts. They had turned it up. And they removed the connector on the back and soldered like 12 gauge wires. And it had a cord on it. It was a fucking nightmare to fix that garbage. And then I sold it to this one dude who has literally blown up every radio he's owned. And he blew it up. Same guy dropped a brand new 101 off of a fucking shelf. Fucked it up. Same guy that hooked a 891 directly into an SB220. Same guy told me that one night he blew up an FT102 and then he proceeded to blow up an FT101. And he got really mad and he like sold the 102 and all the station and everything for like dirt cheap. And I know he wasn't lying because he had the manual. He gave me the manual. And so he might even see this video, but anyway, we always used to joke about if a radio could handle him, he could handle anyone. He was really hard on radios. Anyway, there's a lot of guys that are really hard on radios, but these ones here are usually pretty hard to screw up. But they do fold back power if you don't have them hooked up well. So I think that's another saving grace. I don't know what he did to that one to destroy it. I can't even remember. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he told me it blew up, though. Here is a Kenwood 231A. I think I might have had one of these. (1908) to 1989. Dude, when you think about it, this is... Here it is, 2025. How many years later is this? But, you know, I look at that and I'm like, 1908. He was like only 81. Which, you know, now he'd be like 100 and, you know, whatever. 120 or something, who knows. Anyway, 130. Well, actually, no. It would be 2008 would have been 100, and then 117 years old. I'm not good at doing math in my head, but I've never heard of him. W6UF. He looks like a entertainer or something with a bow tie. To say it can't be done was a challenge to William W. Idle. I think it's Idle. EITEL. In 1927, it was thought that the new 10-meter band was workable for line of transmission only, as the 5-meter band seemed to be. 5-meter band? Seemed to be. W6UF was one of the first stations on the band, determined to prove that 10 meters was good for long-distance communication. In a few weeks, he was running daily skeds with W1CCZ and ZL2AC, establishing beyond a doubt the DX qualities of the new band. His homemade transmitter used a crystal he had ground from a chunk of quartz found in a mountain stream. How the hell do you do that? You know what? This points out something really interesting. I mean, just, you know, because, like, he made a crystal out of quartz. So, can we do the same thing today? Why not, right? Because the companies don't make crystals anymore, but I don't know how the crystal would work. Is it like set up like a capacitor with like metal plates in between it? You know, on the sides? Or like, what do they do? Because like quartz doesn't really conduct. It's an insulator, right? I mean, Anyway, let's read this again. He saved money for a few weeks to buy an 852 tube for the 150 watt amplifier stage. What in the hell is an 852? He built a 2-tube regenerative receiver. His efforts were surmised in QST in January 1929. 10 meters was not like the ultra-high frequencies. It was a DX band. This was a auspicious beginning for a 20-year-old lad with a consuming curiosity about radio communications. His biggest problem was the cranky 852 tube. It required enormous plate voltage to work properly at 10 meters. He decided he could build a better tube. Well, wait a minute. Build a better tube. Okay. Which would work at a reasonable plate potential. His chance came in 1933 when he went to work for a vacuum tube manufacturer in the San Francisco area. Bill, along with Jack McCall, W6CHE, developed a low voltage, high current tube that proved superior to the 852. Unfortunately, the company, a marine communications business, wasn't interested in selling tubes to amateurs, so the tube sales languished, and Bill and Jack soon left the company. And in 1934, starting a new enterprise, Etel McCall Incorporated, their goal was to build reliable iMac tubes. Holy shit. So this is the iMac dude that would operate at higher frequencies than anything available. They borrowed $5,000 and designed a revolutionary new triode tube, the 150T. This was the start of something big. iMac tubes were quickly adapted for commercial and military use, and the little company prospered. Within a decade, it became the United States' leading producer of power electron tubes and related devices. The combination of Jack, the planner and designer, and Bill, the hands-on activist, was fortuitous. The right guys with the right products at the right time. Bill's interest in amateur radio, although curtailed by the effort of building a company and the demands of war production, never flagged. Bill and Jack went out of their way to enlist radio amateurs in the company to encourage them in the new commercial industry and to develop tubes for amateur radio. Over the years, Bill never lost his inventor's curiosity. His interest in advancing the frontiers of amateur radio continued. In 1961, iMac Radio Club, under the leadership of Bill, Jack, and Hank Brown, established the first amateur two-way moon bounce contact on 1296 megahertz, 1.29 gig, with W1FZJ. Wow. Let's read the rest of this. We're almost done. And this is written by this guy, Bill Orr, who, isn't he like a pretty well-known character too? Bill was a member of the Northern California DX Club and Project Oscar. He donated time and equipment and money to make the early Oscar satellites successful. If there was a job to be done, he'd do it. His enthusiasm and support were often all that kept the early Oscar satellite program from foundering. He was a remarkable, enthusiastic leader in the best sense of the word. He was a remarkable enthusiast and blah, blah, blah. Okay. He was an excellent operator, CW or phone, and set the pace for amateurs many years his junior. Upon retirement, Bill moved to Dayton, Nevada. Okay. and set up his own experimental laboratory, continuing work on ideas that interested him. He was a life member of the ARRL, Project Oscar, and the Five Star Operators Club. He was elected to a fellowship in the Radio Club of America. He passed away February 1989 at the age of 81. His accomplishments were many. In addition to being an active radio amateur, inventor, company founder, and executive, he was a good companion. He left behind a multitude of friends who mourned his passing. He left his mark in the electronics and amateur world. His discontent with the status quo drove him to succeed when others dropped by the wayside. His inquisitive mind made him an alert problem solver. Along the way, he helped others. He was an American original, a self-educated small-town boy who grew up in a turbulent era of rapid and productive scientific growth and mastered his world. We will miss him. 73 Bill. And this was written by Bill Orr, W6SAI. So this is the iMac dude. I had no clue that that's how they come up with the iMac. William W. Ito. Jeez. How do you top that one? I got some iMacs over there in that there amplifier and in my SB220. So thank you, Bill. Anyway, good Lord. Story time with the hack. You get that one? One of them's going to be 440. Dual bander. I like these old Kenwood radios, guys. They're super freaking reliable. They might not be anymore. The best of MFJ. We're going to miss you, MFJ. I have that. And I have one of those. And they stayed about the same price for like 30, 40 years. It's crazy. A bencher keyer with an MFJ pace setter on top of it. I just gave one of those to my friend Dave. He's a CW guy. But I've got one in a box that's brand new. Oh man, it looks cool. Larson. Because what does Larson have to do with Coors and bicycle racing? HamRadio out. EGE has joined HamRadio outlet. I don't know what EGE is. It's funny that Bob looks just as old back then as he does now. In fact, I think he looked worse back then. If you've ever seen a picture of Bob, and I don't know, is he the owner or just the president? I don't really know. Actually, it says president/owner. I've personally spoke to him on the phone, and he is a nice guy. I will tell you that. I had some problems with the manager Ron at the Phoenix store, and I had to call Bob. Took care of it. Dude, this was the most worthless radio that they ever made. It just would not work on 11 meters, man. I remember, so when this radio came out, like I said, I was probably about 13 when this magazine came out. And I had a Uniden Pro 520 that I bought with my summer job money. I worked in the field. I lived in Burlington, Washington. And I worked in the field and picked strawberries, rogued spinach, and worked for Washington Bulb Company. I lived on a 20-acre farm myself as a boy. And so I had some hand-me-down Radio Shack CB radios, but I would talk to my friend down the street and some other kids that I knew, and teenagers and young adults and old farts on the radio, and they were always talking about this radio here and the HR 2510, which it's based off of. Unfortunately, this radio only has like a CW and upper sideband or something. But it was supposedly halfway decent for ham radio. But the guys were like trying to figure out how to make it work on CB. I had a broken one. It was in really nice shape. And where's the mode switch on it? I don't see it. Oh, it's just a button. Anyway, it was supposed to be really good mobile, but nobody wanted it because they couldn't use it on 11 meters also. So, this would have been a magazine that I would have read when I was a kid. So it's really crazy to look at it and go, wow, look at this. 10 megahertz XT100. Wow. Crazy. Converter tunes 4 to 18 megahertz with no band switch. Now, this is what I used to always look at. I'd go to the library and I'd get the ARRL books, and I'd read them. And I experimented with electronic kits, electronic sets, at a pretty young age. Like, I think I built my first like crystal radio when I was like 5, and I was just always fascinated with that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I wasn't like a natural whiz bang, but I was interested more so than most people. So even though other people were smarter than me, I was more persistent. The fold wire fed, top loaded, grounded vertical. What in the frickin' hell? Five amp gel cells. Interesting. John J. Meshna Jr. Surplus Electronics. Look at this. Computer software. Back in the day. These scanners, the AORs. You know, you look at a lot of this stuff, and we really haven't come that far, but we have, you know. A lot of things have never changed. Look at that. They've been making that damn tuner forever. RF parts. Dude, I still want one of these damn things. And it better have the rack handles on it, man. It looks more like a laboratory piece of equipment than a ham radio. But yeah. Here's some oscillators. Okay. Damn, dude. I hate getting old, man. I wish I was still a kid. VFO circuit using a voltage variable capacitor is the tuning element, and That's not a voltage variable capacitor. That's a VCO. That's a reactor diode. Interesting. Impedance matching transformers and ladder line. The age-old debate. God, look at these. These look horrible. It's just like crap. I had one of these. I don't know what the hell I did with it. See how it's flexible? Yeah, it's the antenna specialist AS. And I don't know what I did with it. That's the problem. Things from 20, 30 years from now, you can't even tell what the hell it is. You know, look at HAL Communications. A modem. God, Lord. Linko. Megawatts. Now, Linko, I think, made better radios than a lot of people did. As far as HTs were concerned back in the day. Let's see if there's anything interesting. That looks like an ICOM 735. Camtronics. Dude. That's the Yaesu page. Is that the Quadra? It's the FL7000. I had a chance to buy one of these, kind of reasonably priced, but I didn't do it. Horrible, funky looking thing. Ramsey. I had one of their goofy ass CT70s. Didn't work. Somebody gave it to me. Yagis. Heathkit SB1400. That's a cool looking radio. I think it's actually just a Yaesu though. I need a rotor. Ameritron, coax switches, linear amplifiers. Custom crystals. I've never heard of this magazine before. I don't know. I wonder what happened to Barry's Electronics. Sat. Wish you could still buy those, like, reasonably priced. Oh my god. Pocket packet. Get your message across even when no one is listening. Heathkit? Heath Company, they called it back then. Now receive or leave messages with other local hams using the 16K bulletin board featured on the smallest TNC available, the Heath HK21 Pocket Packet. The BBS operates under your call with simple commands like send or write a message, kill a message, and read the file necessary currently on the system. The HK21 Pocket Packet is fully TNC2 compatible. Hookup is easy. Plug in supplied cables instantly to most HTs or wire a separate cable into your mobile or base VHF or UHF rig. Connect your computer via RS-232 and you're ready to call a fast-growing number of packet hams. The HK21 Pocket Packet requires only a single 12-volt DC 40 milliamp power source, as little as 29 milliamps from an optional internally mounted 4.8 volt nickel cadmium battery. Only $219. Now, are these bulletin boards, they still up? I know some of them are, but I mean, like, do they still work like that? Mirage and KOM. Amateur Advanced Electronics Applications in Linwood, Washington, where I used to live. And I guess it must have got too expensive because they moved from Linwood to somewhere else. Missouri Radio Center. Anyway, guys, that was the 1989 May edition of New Ham Radio. Pretty awesome.